G'day everyone, this is Rangadad. Not financial advice, this is just the way I'm looking at the market. If you want to skip all the actual analysis and just go to the end, that's fine too, because I normally provide a summary at the end of where my head's at. This is just my daily market scan that I do to get an idea of where I think things are going. Give me a little bit of bias and things to look out for through the day. Yeah, I'll start with this 15-minute chart. This channel's actually providing a reasonable read, and we came back down and basically tested the middle of this channel, and we have bounced away. My concern with this is volatility is kind of contracting at the moment on the shorter time frames, and generally after such a big run up and expansion of volatility, you tend to get a bit more sideways for a while. You don't necessarily go straight back up into a massive upside run. So I think this trend line here is a pretty decent one. I had to go at drawing that a bit better yesterday, picked up the top here. There's actually a break and a retest there of that trend line, picks up the bottom of this one and comes back down to the bottom of this one. So I think that's, even if we clear this, it's the 200 EMA here on the, 200 EMA on the 1 hour, 800 EMA on the 15-minute. That's going to be a critical one to sort of clear and hold and to move away strongly from. Price action today is not necessarily giving me the indication that it wants to do that. It's been pretty choppy and pretty undecided. And after having such a big run up and a pullback, and after having, like, apparently Binance reckons it was more like 8 to 10 billion in liquidations, because on their platform alone, they reckon there was over 2.1 billion. So that's a lot of money to be drained out of the system. It'll take some time to recover and to get some momentum behind it, I think. But it's still holding the 200 EMA on the 15-minute, which is the 50 on the 1 hour. That's a pretty strong EMA to be holding, and pretty strong move away from it as well. Not huge volumes today compared to yesterday buying the dip, but we haven't sort of flashed down into these vector candles either. So there is a chance we get rejected off the 200 here, which, if that happens and it's a proper rejection, not just a little test, bounce down and then push through, then I would actually expect it to come back down to the bottom of this channel, potentially into the 93, high 93s. I don't really expect it to come back down fully into this wick if we do get down that far, but that level, that sort of region from about 94,500 down to 93,500, I'd be looking for a bounce off the bottom of this channel somewhere. And you can see it can go below and above. The channel's not 100%. I think I did widen it a little bit yesterday, but you know, the tops and bottoms of it, we'll see some action either side, I think. So short term, this is pretty key. We zoom back out to the daily. I think we really need to close above yesterday's close, but even still, we're still going to have some resistance up around that 102, 500, 600, somewhere around that. That's been a a critical trend line. We've now basically tested it twice, and a third test may break through. Fourth test is a lot more likely, but 3 tests is pretty good. Just not really seeing a huge support for it at the moment. The good news is, though, if we do close up around here, the daily stochastic momentum has ticked back to the upside, and BBWP may increase from here. It's certainly very low. For it to expand from here, you would expect it to push through pretty hard. And look, after such a big crash like this, it is a good time for the market to try and move higher, because it's leaving a lot of people out of that run. All these people that were massive long up here got wiped out, and that's what the market likes to do. Did it here, wiped them out, and then moved to the upside. It did it at the start here as well. So these moves here were massive wipeouts before moving to the upside. This one here was actually a pretty hard fought zone. So yeah, it really likes to wipe people out before it moves higher. So I guess that's the bullish hopium at the moment, that we do break through, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Closures above that value area high are positive. Closures below that, in between the point of control and the value area high, I'd be a little bit more bearish, but that could see us that 93,900 area is the bottom of the like it's the value area low as well. So there's a bit of confluence there for a potential move down to 93, 94. At least on a wick. I don't know whether it would get back down, and like, you got to be wary that it would come back down and test the mid band of this channel. But at this stage, I'd say it's not likely. All right. Let's have a look. I wanted to have a look at the pivots. I left them out yesterday, but this was an interesting chart to be watching yesterday as well, during the dump and the rebound. So yeah, pivots have been pretty key for Ethereum so far this month. They're not necessarily 100% always, but when you're doing sort of big moves to the upside or the downside, they can provide some resistance. And if they come in confluence with other levels, then they're worth looking at. Interesting, we're coming up to another one on Ethereum there at the moment. BTC is right in the middle of the main pivots. So that's going to take some getting through as well, I would think. There's a little trend line here too, just on the 1 hour. So that may provide some resistance. Some people will probably try and join up these as well. Potentially there, but that's more of a parallel channel. If we can't break above that trend line, then I'd suggest Bitcoin is going a bit more bearish. Now there is the potential on the 1 hour to actually bounce quite significantly from here. Just looking at the cyclic RSI, it is like momentum's to the upside with the cyclic RSI. It's technically bullish. So that's a good sign for crypto. I think if we do break through this trend line, and that it's the downward channel, on the 15-minute there, that could lead to a pretty significant run, and I think we'd be potentially back up and would at least test the 106 level again, but I'd almost expect it to be coming up and working its way up into this pivot, which is about basically 112K. If that's the case, the momentum that's going to be behind that on the daily should see us break through that. And that will be a fairly critical break. All right. There will be some other resistance around 110 and stuff as well, but generally, if we hold or if we break through those trend lines, then in a few days we should actually be testing all-time highs again. What we don't want to see is a rejection off those highs. And look, I don't know that that's actually even going to play out. There's a lot of, I guess, downside pressure on the markets at the moment. So let's have a bit more of a look at that. NASDAQ, decent move today. Momentum still hasn't switched to the upside yet, but after such big swings too, it may take a little while for momentum to really switch. But if we break above that trend line, which NASDAQ doesn't look super strong at the moment, then break above that, crypto will probably go on a run as well. Qs, same deal. I just haven't got that trend line in there. Yeah, look, definitely need to break above those trend lines, really get properly bullish. We're just the equal weights are just back in doing vector candle recovery at the moment. Another up day is potentially going to recover this vector, and then we may actually reject off that. Momentum though, if that happens, momentum will actually switch to the upside. So something to pay attention to. SPY is just in this channel here at the moment. I would expect SPY to come up and recover this vector as well. So in general, I've at least got a kind of a bullish posturing on these charts for the time being. ES, yeah, looks a little crazy on ES there. The other thing to bear in mind is, what's the best one to put that on? Bitcoin longs, people started taking some profit today too, so just be mindful of that. It's kind of a little bit of a bearish sign, but they can take profit on the whole run up. They're certainly not back to key levels. Just want to look at on the shorter time frame. Let's look at actually look at so the last couple of days it's kind of been after the big drops into the open, they've been increasing the price and then sort of dropping it the next day as well. It's at the moment, this is kind of, I remember seeing this last time we had a big drop. I haven't gone back to look and to show you guys, but generally what I remember it being is, when you're around the highs and the market's trying to pull back, but it's trying to wipe out retail at the same time, it does some funny things through the day. So it'll make retail think that it's going up, or it'll make retail think that it's going down. If there's enough shorters in the market, it'll rip it to the upside, make it market think it's going up, key pivot, pull back hard. It's, this one here, pull back on the open, like open down, pull up, rip all the shorters to pieces. So there's going to be a lot more of that kind of silly buggers going on. And I just have a feeling that we're still potentially got some more downside to come soon. Not necessarily straight away, though. At the moment, cyclic RSI is actually tending to the upside. Although if this ticks down, that could actually lead to another day down. Anyway, it's just interesting. Like, the close is typically the key, but even here, like, you need to go down to sort of the 15-minute or the 10-minute even to get an idea of what's going on. But they're pretty tricky. It's just, I guess at the start of the week, we kind of expected a fair bit of chop this week, and that's what we're getting so far. And this could be climbing the wall of worry. Certainly the daily. I mean, overall, the momentum on the daily, the middle band of the cyclic RSI bands is trending to the downside. Typically, that suggests momentum has switched, but it is a very lagging sort of indicator as well. So just be careful on that. But if it's moving down and you've got cyclic RSI moving down hard outside the bottom band, then expect something big to be happening, especially on the daily or even the 4-hour. So, like, I wouldn't say the stock market's looking particularly great yet. Momentum is still down on this thing. It's just we are grinding to the upside, closing gaps, but not really convincing that we want to actually go up. Like, there's been nothing like this sort of bottoming structure here around a key level. Obviously, that was a bounce off that, but it's going to be a fair bit of resistance, I think, if we do get back up into the 6100s. Equal weight as well. It's kind of in no man's land. It suggests, like, there is a vector candle there. It could come up and recover that. So another couple of days up would not surprise, but momentum is clearly to the downside. It's just on reduced BBWP. So if BBWP expands as you're going up to recover this, then that's actually would be a pretty good sign that we may actually clear some of these key trend lines. At the moment, the RSP is not really giving us any indication that downside is likely. So at this stage, it does look like we're climbing the wall of worry. IWM is actually looking a little bit more positive, at least in the futures. Momentum looks like it wants to actually bounce to the upside. And IWM has basically held this key level through here. So a closure around here for IWM could actually suggest that markets will actually go up. It could be a fake out, but that is a positive sign for markets. XLY XLP is up as well, but really just closing a gap at the moment. Momentum's still pretty well to the downside. Industrials are still to the downside, but again, key level here, like a couple of days down on industrials and then a bounce could actually play out. The issue with industrials is we have made a lower high here. If the market flushes and we clear below 130 on industrials, then I'd expect quite a decent pullback. That would be argument for our 15% on the S&P 500. That would be a pretty good target down there on industrials as well. So it's going to be a choppy market. XLP versus SPY is pulling back a little as well. I'd love to see it back below this trend line. What we don't want to see is a bounce from this trend line again, because I would suggest that will be looking at further downside on markets. Equal weight XLY XLP is pretty strong though. Like, that's suggesting markets should go up. Equal weight XLY versus SPY. XLP versus SPY? XLP versus SPY is pulling back pretty hard. So yeah, that's a positive sign as well. So at the moment, most of these things are looking like it could be climbing the wall of worry. A little bit concerning that consumer staples is testing the bottom of this again, but consumer discretionary is getting a decent bounce here, so certainly not out of the woods, but climbing the wall of worry kind of makes sense here. KRE is getting a good buy as well. It's vector candle recovery zone. If KRE breaks above that trend line, then I'd be suggesting that the rest of February should be pretty positive overall. ITB, little bounce here. Good area for a bounce, but needs to hold that and move to the upside. Home builders, same sort of deal. Hasn't really left much of a vector here, so almost closed that gap as well. Semis, it's got a bit of support off this moving average. Needs to turn around pretty soon, like momentum wise. Need another decent update on semis. There is some key earnings coming out after the close today as well, which I'll get to in a sec. DJI Gold is pulling back. That's not a great sign. And this is the other bad sign, I guess. DJT Gold has broken that key level. That's not great. So there's I guess that forms part of the wall of worry. Can we actually climb despite these sort of reads on indicators that are normally pretty good at picking major dumps? Yeah, potentially. VIX is pulled back below that trend line, which I'm going to get rid of that now because it might give me a false read. Momentum's still to the upside on the VIX, but not that that's a great indicator either. Interesting to see what happens to that trend line there. Skew yesterday did pull back, so I'm a little surprised there's so much green on the charts today. Hopefully that's not an omen of what's coming, because if this pulls back again today, it's not great. We might get a little bit more downside, but we would be coming into this key trend line. What you don't want to see is skew breaking this trend line to the downside. That would suggest a bigger pullback, in my opinion. Certainly 2 closures below that, I'd be looking for that 10 to 50%. The 1 day, sorry, I should show that. That's what I'm looking at there on the skew. The VIX 1 day, it's pulling back as well, which typically that's actually a bottoming sign. So that's a decent pullback. So that gives a little bit more weight to the climbing the wall of worry. DAX is doing something similar to NASDAQ and S&P at the moment, sort of opening lower and or flushing and then pulling back up to the upside. DAX may close this gap, or at least get close to it. But I keep hearing rumors that the German economy is in heavy recession at the moment, but stock market doesn't think so. Good move on the Hang Seng. So China's looking strong. This should actually continue. Momentum's upside, BBWP's upside. So it looks like yeah. Looks like, yeah, see the Chinese top 50s not looking as strong, but coming off low BBWP, if it continues its tick to the upside, I would actually expect that to push through and go on a pretty decent run. That would make a lot of sense. But the Hong Kong market is certainly suggesting upside there. Might be a key resistance level here. Maybe a little pullback, but momentum's definitely in its favour there. UK 100 is actually finding a little bit of support here. So, you know, see how we go. Momentum is to the downside though, so just be careful of that. Interest rate decision, they're actually expecting an interest rate decrease there. So if that doesn't happen, pullbacks are probably likely. And then shares. Wouldn't call that they're in the red, but anyway. So Japanese market still in this freaking range. I love how the Japanese market has the US news. Yeah, momentum's to the downside, and it's just retested that all those EMAs again. So it may actually pull back into this 200 EMA again, which has been a pretty good support level for it. It's going to be at least the 4th time that it's tested it though recently. So may actually break below that, which if the US stock market does pull back from here, that would make sense. Now, this is actually interesting. So treasuries are getting a decent buy here. BBWP's reset. It is in the bullish control zone, but there's also technically probably a head and shoulders here if you like that sort of pattern. So you'd be looking at potentially move up into this area. We measured that out. Is somewhere around, yeah, somewhere around 91, which is not bad. It suggests yields are going to come down, which would be good for the market as well. So that's another case for the climbing the wall of worry. Bonds are also heading back up, which is good. I wouldn't say that's the strongest base there, but it's a good sign that they're going up. I'll give them that. So again, good sign for the bulls and climbing the wall of worry. Even this bond indicator's ticking to the upside as well, slowly, but this one doesn't move as quick as the other one, so I think it actually gives it slightly more confidence in the read that it gives. But anyway, it's looks like it wants to find a bit of support here as well. Again, not the best level though, and momentum is to the downside, so it's going to be, I think it's still going to be choppy, but again, another argument for climbing the wall of worry. US 2-year, it looks like it's retested that trend line and confirmed to the downside. So I'd expect the 2-year to keep coming back, treasuries to go up, and that should actually lead to lower dollar and prices on stocks to go up. So again, 10-year yield has done the same sort of thing, retested that trend line and pulled back. May find a bounce somewhere around this trend line. That was a pretty major one. It even had a little moment there when it went through it on the way up. So I would expect some support around that, potentially around the 103, sorry, 4.3 level. There is a decent amount of trade through that level. Chinese 2-year, they back in business? Nope. Today. So it'd be interesting to see where the Chinese bond yields go. That will govern the way that global liquidity goes. Copper breaking to the upside. So again, this is supporting climbing the wall of worry. Gold breaking the mid-band. That's suggesting we've got a recession coming at some stage soon. But gold could hit the 3K mark before I actually thought it might. I didn't bloody hold that. Didn't save my chart yesterday. Yeah, so pullback is unlikely at the moment. Maybe another day up and pull back into this trend line here, retest it. But yeah, that's great for my gold shares. Silver going really well as well. Silver versus gold finally starting to pick up. If silver versus gold breaks that level, silver should go on a pretty major run, especially if gold's going up at the same time. So silver realistically break this key resistance level and at least 34, 35, but I'd be going back. This one's not particularly good. Great Britain is better. So up around the 30 pound. So yeah, potentially break this resistance and yeah, 30 pounds. So that would be, you got to expect it to, on this BBWP, and momentum is squarely in its favor here. Silver's a good one. US oil has broken below that trend line and retested it today. So, I mean, it's also retested the value area high there. Pretty solid bounce off that, actually. Let's go to the 1 hour. Yeah, that's interesting. Oil may actually pull back in, recover some of this vector, and then move back to the upside, which you'd kind of expect if all the economic things are looking positive, then oil's probably going to go to the upside, despite what Trump wants it to do. But yeah, break below that trend line. It needs to recover that fairly soon. Dixie pulling back, recovered half this vector, so that's good. But yeah, break back below 108 is definitely positive there for Dixie. And if yields are sort of confirming that trend line, so you'd expect Dixie to keep coming back, which should see, yeah, most other currencies against the dollar going well. The Japanese one kept high against the Dixie, even though the euro got spanked the other day. So, but the euro's reclaiming that trend line again as well. Key support level there at 102 for the euro. The Brazilian real's doing all right. All right. Great Britain pound is doing okay as well, holding above that trend line. So it looks like the US dollar's in a spot where it should come down quite a bit. I should probably convert some of my US dollars into freaking Aussie dollars. Anyway. Yeah, so this will be a key read today. We do have a read at the moment, but without Chinese 10-year actually trading, I think this could actually be a false read. So a bounce from this trend line would actually make a lot of sense. I have to wait and see what happens today once things come back into trade. We haven't got any new reads on these yet. All still pointing to the upside, except for the home price index. So the home price index rolling over is a sign that there's potentially some issues, especially if it's going to be a real estate related crash. We didn't get the crash in 2007, 2008 until this had crossed some of those key moving averages, particularly the 50 moving average there. So I'm not suggesting that this is a sign of any major market pullback yet. Percentage of stocks above the 15 moving average has sort of bounced off a pretty reasonable level historically. So that's a good sign that the upside does have some breadth about it. Momentum is the downside there, but this could switch pretty quickly if markets continue the upside. Yeah, so I'm just going to move this up here a little bit because I think that's more the trend line. But Mag 7 is still generally heading to the upside. Still don't like the look of Tesla, but a switch on momentum in Tesla would actually send it to new high. I reckon we'd end up hitting that $500. Nvidia is getting a little bit of support, but it has rejected that point of control. Yeah, I still think Nvidia's got some room to move to the downside before earnings. Just recover this vector candle here, make the market worried, keep that wall of worry happening. Google breaking to all-time highs though, that's pretty positive. Microsoft, this isn't great for Microsoft. PBWP is at extremes, so may lead to a bit more downside. It really needs to climb back above this trend line to be bullish on Microsoft. ARK-K, interestingly, ARK-K has held the highs here pretty well. Momentum's to the downside, but if it can just sort of go sideways here at the highs, then you'd kind of, this is a sign that risk on is still there in the marketplace. Apple recovering this trend line here. So that's a positive sign for markets as well. At the moment, like momentum is to the downside though, so got to be careful. But again, that could switch to the upside pretty easily, especially if we head up to recover this vector and potentially break that trend line. So they're the best case scenarios. Is actually, it's not just a vector candle recovery here. It'll be a bigger move. Triple M, that's kind of a topping pattern. Amazon, so earnings are coming out end of the week. Up into key trend line, I'd expect Amazon to pull back from there on earnings. So we might open on earnings just below that trend line, hit it, and then pull back. But whatever happens, I expect a rejection off that trend line. So whilst we're climbing the wall of worry at the moment, it looks that way. It might only last for another couple of days before we get a pullback. Meta is still getting some support there. Airbnb needs to break that trend line. Earnings next week might do it. So AMD is a critical one. Earnings coming out today after the close, and it's rising into earnings. AMD's got some pretty big trend lines either side of it. If we break above this trend line, I'd actually expect that to be a pretty good sign for markets moving forward. Reject off that, and it's back into this 106 sort of level. And I would be expecting markets to pretty well pull back. So if that's the case, it would look more like a dead cat bounce than a climbing the wall of worry. AVGO, sorry, I think AVGO, no, its earnings are later. So yeah, semis earnings. I mean, ASML surprised to the upside and got a bid accordingly. Yeah, all this tariff stuff, it's going to be basically end up being no real effect on the stock market. What it could do though, longer term, in the next 6 months or so, you'll start to see earnings and projected earnings drop, because there is a hit for business more than there is for like inflation and stuff like that. Typically, the business profits, net margins, and net margins are huge at the moment across the board in US stocks. So there is a hit that they can take and still be relatively positive, but that would lead to a pullback on the markets. If they do more damage than that, then look out below. But I don't expect the tariff thing to play out too much in the markets short term. Yeah, TSM. So Stellantis and Ford are still toying with this level. So the ASX had a bit of a positive day-ish. recovered this vector here, so a move to the upside on ASX kind of would make sense, at least more vector candle recovery there. Balance of trade don't make much difference. Yeah. Okay, total crypto market cap pulling back a bit. It's not a great sign. Momentum's still to the upside, even if it sort of closes around here. But yeah, total excluding BTC is sort of closing lower at this stage. Momentum's still to the upside on a lot of these after that gigantic wick to the downside. I think that's kind of fake news, but they're holding. This is actually the 200 EMA. Yeah, so it's actually the 200 EMA. Most of them are still looking a little sick. So stablecoins versus BTC is still above that level. So BTC should be pulling back right now, and probably pulling back hard. Yeah, shit, it's pulled back pretty hard off that top of that range. Breaking above this 200 EMA on the daily today, I'd actually expect BTC to pull back even further. Probably pretty close to the lows of yesterday. I'm not closed yet. Got 4 hours to see what happens, but this has been a pretty good indicator, which I wish I was actually watching the other day, because that bounce off that level was quite bearish. BBWP is still the upside, momentum's to the downside. That's, again, probably a false read just based on this candle here. Certainly the moving averages are suggesting momentum's to the upside. ETH versus BTC longs, these guys are still hard at it. Good on them. They're still getting flogged. Like, what the fuck? Give it up, dudes. I don't know what they've got going on there, but ETH USD longs are dropping. People are taking profit pretty hard today. Shorts are dropping as well, though, so I think the market's just taking quick profits wherever it can. BTC USD shorts down. ETH dominance is still falling. BTC dominance is still rising and looks like it wants to break out of that level, which we haven't seen that level broken since March 2021 to the downside. Last time we saw it break to the upside was October 2020, which was a pretty good time for BTC. So not that I think this really means anything too much at the moment. I just think this means that altcoins, there just isn't the money in the market for them at the moment, and there's too many of them, so they're getting smashed. I wouldn't use this as a particular read to trade Bitcoin. So Ethereum, yeah, God, that's a massive candle. Watching the shorter timeframes on Ethereum is probably going to be the key here. Not a great sign. That's a lower high there after a pretty good day of upside. That's not great. Might find some support here. Could just be recovering this wick. I'll actually move over and have a look at. That's pretty quick move to the downside there. CBD is dropping as well. Bit of buying support here, but CBD is almost breaking new lows. And again, it's a lower high. If we break below this low here, then I'd actually expect it to come back down into the 94s, which is around the bottom of that channel that we were talking about earlier. This is what I wanted to look at. So it looks like it's running for this liquidity here at least at 97. But there is a fair bit below too. So that 92 level comes into play, but also by then it'll probably be another sort of quick move to the downside to just soak up all this liquidity. It depends on the amount of buying support that comes in around these levels. So you can't really just assume that it's going to flush this whole thing and get down into the 88s, but 88's still on my list of targets. I've actually got some buy orders sitting down around there and 75. But ETH, yeah, Ethereum, there's not a lot for it to really take until it clears that low. So 25k on Ethereum is certainly possible here. It may find some buying support around 25.77, but yeah, looking at the force at which that's coming down, it's going to have to get some pretty significant support soon. Yeah, there's not really much on the 24-hour either. Just trying to see if there's like a little spike in liquidity. It's taken that. It looks more like it wants at least 26.30. Yeah, it just looks like downside is kind of likely here. Continuation to the downside. Surprised Sol didn't take more of this before it moved down. Suggesting there's a lot of selling. Just couldn't hold that level or break through that level. So that's suggesting a bit more downside. What I want to look at the liquidation map. So on the daily, there is decent amount of short liquidations up there. So on Bitcoin, 96, 97 could actually provide a bit of support. That would take out a fairly decent chunk of long liquidations. Yeah, 96. We are pretty heavy to the upside, but as we saw on the way up too, it got really heavy on the downside. Like there was a lot of long liquidations as we were heading up. So yeah, that 94 level would take out a lot from the last 30 days. So be careful to the downside. I wouldn't be taking any longs until I see decent sort of turnaround. Looking at the dark pool liquidity, decent trade at the open today. I have got the 20 largest trades because there wasn't really much in here today, but interesting, there was a sweep at the highs and a sweep at the lows here after this little chop around. So there is big guys that are wanting to get in or out pretty quickly here. Yeah, not a great read on this, but that big trade yesterday at the close has led to more downside, and we haven't been able to sort of break back above on IBIT. IBIT did close that gap yesterday and pull back further today. So, and we did have just an enormous amount of transactions up around this high. So it's not looking great. A little bit of support here for IBIT, but yeah, just based on this, you'd be expecting a little bit more downside. I think we didn't have anything massive come through at the low here. Like one trade at the open, and that was it. And it was only the 56th largest. That's not really something you'd be expecting to see if you're going to make new all-time highs. Coinbase, probably a decent sell at the close there. It's actually grinding up, but we haven't really made any new high there. Mara, same sort of deal. Big trade at the close. XLP, XLY, nothing major on them. XLY is still trending to the upside, which again, that's kind of a bullish trend, but we still haven't closed this gap here either. So I suspect a closure of that gap and a pullback from that, we should actually get more pullback on the markets. Technology, yeah, I mean, gap closed, nothing really more than that yet. Yeah, it's time for a summary, I think. Oh, Sentiment Trader. So Sentiment Trader did actually have smart money coming back in a reasonably big way. It's a 4-point jump is not bad. Retail is getting out. Again, today's read is going to be interesting after the close, but I suspect, yeah, that's kind of telling me that there's probably a little bit more of a pullback coming. But at the same time, we have actually had some increasing off the lows and smart money still coming back in. I wouldn't say it's a conclusive read yet. And certainly from the charts, there's a lot to... Oh, hang on. My mouse just died. There we go. Yeah, nothing super conclusive to suggest we're going down lower. Bitcoin seems to want to hold this level here. It did do a sweep at that level, but momentum is definitely to the downside. Cumulative volume delta, RSI is definitely to the downside. It's looking like downside. Yeah. The fact that this orange moving average here is sort of breaking below the 200 moving average. If it continues to break below the 50 EMA from here, I'd actually expect a little bit more downside because it will be breaking through the mid band of the linear regression channel as well, which would typically, when you break through these key levels, it'll typically lead you to the next one, which would be at least for Ethereum 2600-ish, 2650. Bitcoin may find some support. It's kind of in no man's land. Strong rejection. It was actually off the 200 moving average on the 1 hour. That's a very strong rejection from that. It's leaving behind quite a few vector candles though, so could chop around. stopping volume candle there as well. So this could have just been a liquidity grab before trying to push through. Gonna need to find some serious support here, but I certainly wouldn't call this dead yet, but momentum is to the downside on basically every indicator that I've got here. I just want to have a look at the levels. It's on the daily, on hourly. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't look great on the hourly. May pull back up a little bit here, but yeah. The hourly chart looks like it wants to come back into these vectors, back down around that 94. So that'll look pretty nasty on the daily. Especially if we do close below that point of control. So I don't know how quick this is going to come down. It's got 3.5 hours to sort of, if it does want those vector candles to come down and then move back to the upside, but it's potentially going to find some support still around the 96,600 as well. 96,500, something like that. Could be choppy. We need to find some support reasonably soon on Bitcoin. Otherwise, got to start talking about the 86 level. I do expect 86 to provide some support. Doesn't have to, but I would expect it to. So yeah, shorter time frames are the key at the moment. The 1 hour doesn't look great. 15-minute doesn't look great either. At the same time, like getting down to the 93.2, 93.3 level, that's a 3.6 standard deviation move if we get to there from here. So I'd expect that to be providing some support at the bottom of this channel. It's going to look pretty nasty though if we're getting back down there again. What you want to see is a closure of the 13 EMA back above the 50. So after a big move in either direction, that kind of confirms that you are going back up. Another good confirmation is when the 13 is overextended to the downside and you get the 5 cross back above it. That's actually a pretty good sign that you're switching directions as well. Okay. So yeah, I think I'll let this one play out to the downside. I'm not really interested in shorting it at this stage. I'm not convinced enough, but if we get that switch of the 5 back above the 13, I'll be getting a little bit more interested in taking some longs. So yeah, in summary, it looks like it's going to be a choppy rest of the week. We could be climbing the wall of worry, but there's a lot of headwinds, particularly for crypto at the moment. Just on the charts, like forget about the political stuff. The charts are suggesting that potentially some more downside, at least over the next couple of days, before potentially moving up. They're the key levels: point of control, top of this channel, bottom of the shorter time frame channel. And then if we're breaking below that, you've got this wick recovery around 91, but I suspect if we're coming back down there, it'll probably head a little bit lower, down to the bottom of that channel. Just because closures within this channel typically going to lead to further downside. So daily closure above that, and we're certainly not in a huge amount of danger yet, but that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm just going to be looking at shorter time frames, looking for recovery. And if I see a breakout of the 1 hour 200, so this 800 EMA and the 15, that's going to get me a little bit more interested in the longs. Yeah, it's been a choppy day, and typically if you're going to go on a decent move to the upside on Bitcoin, after doing this chop and having a bigger move down like this, you wouldn't expect any massive run to the upside straight away. I think 103, 103, 500 is probably going to provide a bit of resistance, but if we do break above, there was some key levels up around 104 and a half. And then, yeah, I think we've got all sorts of resistance levels that we can look at above that. But for the time being, momentum's to the downside on the shorter time frames. And these vectors in here are going to be pretty attractive for price to come into. All right. That's it for today. I think everything else is moving down as well. Oh, the other thing too, there was a couple of things that really held their own yesterday, and Sol wasn't really one of them. Sol's in a decent level at the moment here, but Hype really held its trend pretty well, held this channel. No major flush there. Sui wasn't great, but neither was XRP. XRP just bounced off this level and right back up into that zone. So XRP could come back down to 2.2 pretty easily, but potentially even lower. Yeah, a lot of these are below 200 moving averages on the daily. Finding some support off 800s, but yeah, it's the other thing, Sui AI bounced pretty well. Obviously, it had been absolutely smashed down to below its open anyway. But some of the AI is still getting a little bit of interest, just not, I mean, percentage-wise, they're probably decent moves, but they're not convincing moves at the moment. I think breaking back above, like for AI Fun, breaking back above about 1.5 cents would be a better sign. But yeah, AI has been punished along with pretty well everything else. Checks was one that actually held up really well. So this is a real world asset play. So that's something to keep in mind. And Supra held up pretty well as well. So it's not looking great. It hasn't cleared that trend line, but ones to watch. Lingo did actually hold up well, but it's testing the break to the downside here. That's not a great sign. Yeah, I guess just back to candle recovery. Recovering this wick looks like it could be a play today. Dio is actually doing all right. This looks like a fun game, but yeah, definitely like pretty significant downtrends on a lot of these things. But they do look close to making a recovery. just how much of this vector they come back into, much of that wick. IMX is at nearly 2023 levels. Yeah, I think it's going to be choppy couple of days. Hype finding a little bit of support here. Big volumes coming through on it though as well. Yeah, it's Bitcoin with a little bounce here. A pretty good reversal pattern, but it could just be a retest of this 200. So, and the 50 there. So just be a little bit careful with going long here. Not convinced by this yet. So, yeah, look. Crypto looks like it's got more downside today. As I said, need to clear key levels, moving averages like the 5 back above the 13, and clearing that 1 hour 200 EMA, I think is critical for it.